Let me let you into some secrets about TED, if I might. And you can see one of the secrets up there. TED says you've got 18 minutes, to give the speech, but that's not exactly all they say. What they say is this. They say you have 18 minutes to give the speech of your life. And I have to let you in to a little secret. This is my 4th TEDx talk, and every one has been different. But this one is especially special because today it's not about me giving the speech of my life. What I really, really want it to be is the speech of our lives. To put that another way, what I'm hoping will happen today is that what you'll get is a speech that totally changes the way you see things, and as a result of that, the way that we act on the things that we see. And as we go through this, we're really going to look at just 3 important parameters. And you can see those parameters there. The parameter of impact. We're going to look at the impact that each one of us has, not just on our own lives, not just on the people in our business, but on the lives of people that we most likely will never get to meet. We're going to look at how often we don't have habits that matter, how often we look for the shiny new object, how often we look for the one-off solution instead of the habits that change our lives. And the third thing, and I think the most important thing, is we're going to look at connection. A fellow TEDx speaker, Brené Brown, you've probably seen Brené's brilliant talk on vulnerability. And she puts it this way. She says, connection is why we're here. Connection, or gives, as she puts it, meaning and purpose to our life. So let's look at some numbers. They're interesting numbers. You can see them all over the screen there. What do they all relate to? Well, let's take a look at the 85-50. That's a good place to start. It's an interesting stat that you may know about. It's a very fascinating stat. Let me show you the stat. It turns out that 85 people in our world earn more than 50% of the entire world combined. And what's very interesting is often we look at those people who are in that 85 over here on this side to kind of do interesting things, and we leave much of that up to them, sadly. And we'll see why there's a better way on that in a moment. So let's look at another stat. Let's look at this one. This is a fascinating stat, the 71, or the 70 and the 5.43. Let's look at the 5.43 first. I call it the myth of CSR, or corporate social responsibility. I think corporate social responsibility is an outmoded, out-useful term. I really do. So if you look at the total giving that goes on in the US, which, by the way, last year was $380 billion, what you find is, surprisingly, that business only accounts for 5.43% of that. But there's a deep, dark sort of side to that number. And the deep, dark side to that is that if you look at so-called small to medium-scale enterprises, which I guess most of us are, then when you look at that stat, you find that that 5.43% is actually all coming from the big end of town, if you will, the corporates. And that's, by the way, not a criticism in any way, shape, or form for those of us who own and operate small to medium-scale business or business heirs. It is to say that when we're operating those small to medium-scale businesses, we can't afford to go out and get a CSR professional and all those kind of things. We can't afford to go and do the due diligence. What we're concerned with, and rightly so, is making our businesses thrive. And so what happens is our need, which is an innate need to give back, actually doesn't happen. So SME businesses, as I said, 0% of the giving, but if you listen to any politician in the so-called first world, you get another interesting stat, which is this stat, which is SME businesses, we're really important. The budget, for example, in Australia recently was all about SMEs and how that worked. And they say, 70% of our economy is driven by SMEs, which is correct. So now you see the paradox where the economy is being driven by SMEs, but when it comes to giving, it's not just happening in that sense. So let's work with some more numbers. Let's take this one as a fascinating, fascinating number. If you look at the role of charities, well, not the role of charities, but if you look at the growth of charities, and if you look at that over the last 15 years, the number of charities in almost every country has doubled. For example, in the US right now, that number is 1.8 million charities. So just go figure, because I'm not a mathematician, but it figures I think there should be some sort of relationship here. And so the relationship should be, I think, if we've doubled the number of charities, then we have to have halved the number of challenges that still exist. And you and I know that isn't the case. So maybe there's something that we're not seeing. So the charities, as I said, have expanded. But there's been some interesting things that happen when the charities expand. What happens then is they get, nothing wrong with this, because they have to do this in order to be sustainable. So now what happens is you get competition for donors. I believe the term here in the United Kingdom is chuggers. Is that the right term? Where you get sort of accosted, and that could, of course, be on the phone and so on and so forth. And you get the sort of guilt-making pictures and all those sorts of things. And you get once-off fads, which last typically for about 4 weeks if they're good. Think back to the Ice Bucket Challenge, for example. But the question is, did that change the way you and I look at and see the world? It didn't. What it did, we all got wet for some reason and wasted a hell of a lot of water when there are 780 million people in the world who don't have anything. So it's kind of interesting sort of thing. But it was fun, right? It was really fun to do. So that's the scenario. So it seems to me maybe we should be asking, is there a better way? Could there be a better way? Well, just come with me and explore that and look at some of these numbers. They're absolutely amazing numbers. So if you look, for example, at what it would cost each year to give basic education for everybody, you can see, and by the way, this is not for everybody here in Jersey. This is like for the entire world, 6 billion, which in relation to governmental budgets is pretty tiny. Let's take another one. What about water and sanitation for all? Well, look at that number. Just $9 billion to fix that. What about the kids that die in childbirth? What about the mothers that die in childbirth? Look at that. $12 billion just to fix that one. And look at this, basic health, and you can see the source there from Global Issues. Basic health and nutrition for all, just 13 billion. Now let's contrast these numbers with something else. As we look at these next set of numbers, please, there's no judgment in any of these numbers. So for example, we know that it would cost $6 billion to give basic education to everybody. Let's just look at makeup. Now again, there's no judgment in this. I need the creams as much as you do, okay? So I'm not saying we should stop makeup. It just gives us a comparison. So the number on that one, this is just in the US, is $8 billion. You see the interesting contrast. What about this one? What about ice creams? Double, something like that. This is just the US. The number's actually 11 billion. And I'm not saying let's not eat ice cream. This one is interesting. Let's go not to the US, no, let's go to Japan, and let's take a look at Japanese entertainment each year. $35 billion. Now, here's an interesting one. That's alcohol. This is US. The number is actually 105 billion. Whoa. Take a moment to look at that. And maybe we need to find a better way, which isn't stopping doing this. It's not stopping doing that. Let me show you what that will, where that way might lead. Because the reality is we can, absolutely can, impact those areas that you see on the left of your screen, but just by taking a different look at how we give back and how we make a difference to those people who might be less fortunate than ourselves. Let's do that this way. with a series of what ifs. Many times, as you, I'm sure, know, the charity proposition is based on guilt. You know, we see pictures of malnutrition and all of those sorts of things. But what if, and by the way, the reason that's a problem is you and I don't like to feel guilty. So therefore, that's not sustainable. It's just not. But still, people try to do that. But what if, just what if we could tweak that? In fact, not tweak it, but what if we could totally change it and all of a sudden it became joyful to share the giving? What about the charity propositions that tend to be based on fads or one-off things? You know, let's go to the charity dance. And again, I'm not knocking the charity dance, but that's like a lot of how it tends to be. But what if, instead of that, what if it could be based on habit? And what if we could do it every second, every day, and in every way? And what if those of us in business could do that just as a result of doing that which we normally do? What if we could? And many times, of course, those of us who are in business, what we strive to do quite correctly, because we've got competitors everywhere, particularly now, is we strive to be different. And that's not an inappropriate thing. But what about if we strived to make a difference? Just through the things that we did as a normal part of you and I doing business together. And we do it through what I call the power of small, where incredibly tiny things just make the hugest difference. And when this happens, whatever this is, and we'll talk about what this can be in just a moment, whenever this happens, then something great happens as well. And you get to choose what that something great is. And the great thing is, unlike normal models where XYZ company proudly supports ABC charity, you always have, every instant, every moment, absolutely total control. So, for example, your this could be whenever we make a sale. Your this could be whenever you send an email. Your this could be whenever you complete a project. Your this could be when you celebrate a win, when you celebrate a birthday, whatever it is, whenever you want. You can define that this totally flexibly. And your giving, when you choose that, can be from as little as 1 cent. Yes, 1 cent can make, as you're going to discover, an amazing difference in this model. And you always have total choice. Total choice over what? Well, 1,000 really high impact, high integrity projects. You can create, as you'll see, multiple impacts. You can create multiple stories, and most important of all, you can create what we call real connection. Let's have a look at some of that. So imagine, for example, that your business was a cafe. Wouldn't it be great when you sold a cup of coffee if someone in need got access to water, just because you sold a cup of coffee? What about when someone was selling a dress, for example, and there's thousands of these stories? What if, when that happened, a kid that's been rescued from the sex trade, for example, in Cambodia, got education so they could find better solutions in their life? What if, when you dealt with an accountant, the accountant celebrated that by making sure that someone in another place got a goat to generate a sustainable income for the rest of their life? And so in B1G1, what happens is we give businesses, as you can see, the power to create compelling stories, really, really compelling stories, just by doing what they normally do. But it's not just about the stories. It's about, as you'll see, making an amazing difference, an extraordinary difference, as we say there, just by doing what you normally do. And by the way, never, ever, ever doubt that the tiniest idea can have huge impacts. Down the bottom right of your screen, I looked this morning on B1G1 from this tiny little idea that went live 5 years ago. You can see the number right there, 63,282,708 giving impacts. We think of those as 62 million smiles, just as a result of businesses doing what they normally do. Interestingly enough, and I'll probably get in trouble for this, but interestingly enough, the great thing about being here is this island is a fantastic example of what we've just been talking about. This is a group of business people here in Jersey. Take a look at what's happening. You can see all of these numbers. It's not about them giving money. This is not about the money. It's about the impact that they give. And you can see all those amazing impacts. Look at this. Look at this next one, which is also kind of interesting. Look at that. Microloans, trees, medical sports. So people are choosing all of these things. The unusual one there is the dollars, and that was because of the Nepal earthquake. But look at this number here, 73,751 days of access to pure life-saving water. And what's really cool is we can actually track, because of the mechanisms, we can actually track where that giving's going. So all I need to do is look at this map right here, and the brown little dots there, they're the clusters of B1G1 projects around the world, and the blue dots are clusters of B1G1 businesses. So if I key in that name that you saw before, right up there, we're going to find it's actually, there we go, it's actually in Jersey. We should click on the A right there. Bang, we see Jersey. Now look, watch what happens. Bang, watch it very quickly. That's the giving of that particular organization right around the world. And all we need now do is just run the mouse over that, and we just see the impacts that are being created. What do you think? Is that pretty wow? Is that pretty wow? It's very, very different, isn't it, from that other model that we perhaps have become familiar with. So with that in mind, let's see if we can get another little number up here. That's the number of coffees that we consume each and every day. So imagine when we consume the cup of coffee, let's have a look. There it is, the coffee. Let's have a look at a particular enterprise called Sarni's. And you can see this, depending on the size, this is no ordinary coffee. When you drink a Sarni's coffee, you're helping rebuild earthquake-affected areas of Nepal. Then you get the medium-sized one, no ordinary coffee. A child in Malawi is getting access to life-saving water. And when you drink the big one, this is no ordinary coffee. You're saving orangutans in Borneo. Thank you. So again, you're seeing this magical choice coming in. And what you're also seeing is those three things: impact, habit, and connection. We also said this was going to be 18 minutes. That really has changed the way we see things and the way we act on what we see. I so hope that that's what's happened. I am so grateful for this particular time with you. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you.